Welcome to Showing Up Solo with Hannah and Nicole, your guides to navigating online marketing for your business.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Showing Up Solo. Today, Nicole and I are joined by Jaime Bell of the Contracts Market. Jaime, would you like to tell our audience a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me. So I am a business lawyer turned entrepreneur, and I have my own law firm here in British Columbia, but I also have this e-commerce shop, Contracts Market, which provides legal contract templates for small business owners. So basically anybody who's operating in the online space. So coaches, copywriters, virtual assistants, graphic designers, service-based freelancers for the most part.
Yeah, we love your products. We use your contracts for our own business. I think it's such a great product. It's a very necessary product. I think a lot of small business owners don't properly protect themselves because they don't know, they can't necessarily afford to speak.
Well, it's also not why they started their business to like dive into contracts. And I feel like I get it because all the things I don't want to do, I just don't do. And unfortunately, not having a contract is one of those things that actually ends up costing you more in the long run. So all the things I don't like to do in my business, I try to outsource. And I understand from working with entrepreneurs for the last 10 years that legal is usually one of those things they don't want to do. So I try to make it as easy as possible for people.
Yeah, I love that because it's like you said, you don't want to deal with it. So you need to make it, you need to find a way of making it easier. So you've really done that for for as many people as you can.
Yeah, thanks. And I try to make it a little fun too. And try to take a lot of the like shame and judgment around it. I get so many DMs like, I don't understand this about law, or like, this is kind of what I mishmashed together. I don't know what I'm doing. Sorry. And I'm like, stop apologizing. Like I know how to make a logo. Like, why do you assume that you're born with this innate knowledge of how to be a lawyer? I've gone to school for 7 years for this. So, and like learned a lot along the way. It's not your world. So I think it's just always like stay in your lane and outsource things that are not your area of expertise.
Well, and what I love is actually using your contracts that you provide like a really easy to follow Word document, which is like, this is where you want to insert this, and this is why you want this section, and you pick whether you need this or this, and like that you give the explanation, you translate the legalese.
They're kind of like choose your own adventures. Remember those books where you could like jump off a cliff or go in the train, or like decide which one you want to do. So that's how I've designed them.
Well, that's a really important way because it's like you said, when it's out of your lane, you get really anxious about like, oh my God, I have to fill out this contract. So having someone like really tell you, okay, you just need to do this and this and this, it just takes all that stress away. Because I know when I first started my business, I was, trying to fill out contracts for clients. I was like, oh, what am I doing? How do I do this? Like,
and you've always got that little thing in your stomach that's like, but did I miss something? Because you don't know what you don't know. And so that's usually when I'm reviewing people's contracts that they've kind of cut and paste or mashed together from what they've found. They're usually pretty well done in terms of like what's in there, but it's usually the things that are missing that are the issue. Yeah. People are pretty good about their payment terms and like how they get paid and stuff like that.
The most important thing in their mind.
Yeah. And I agree.
So as much as we could wax poetic about your amazing contract.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
We invited you here for a very special reason. We have been talking we're kind of talking about email marketing in our most recent episodes. And we would love to get some insights from someone in the legal industry who could maybe just let us know what business owners need to be conscious of when they are diving into email marketing.
Yeah, totally. So I think we all know that email lists are like the number one thing to have in our business in terms of marketing, especially Well, it's July when we're recording this, and Adam Mosseri on Instagram seems to be coming at us in all directions with new ways to market our businesses. And so I think email is such an important way that we do that. I know we spend a lot of time growing our email list in our business, my business. I always say our, as if like I'm operating this with someone, like I just need to own it. It's my business. People do this all the time. Anyway, so yeah, email marketing from a legal perspective, I think this all falls back into like website terms of use and privacy policy land, where a lot of people think, well, I don't read other people's website terms of use and privacy policies, so why do I need them? Those kind of things. So this is all kind of lumped together. So the biggest reason we need to worry about these kind of laws when we are growing our email list is because there are many different laws around the world that are cracking down on people's privacy and protecting it, because laws are always kind of late to the party in terms of keeping updated. And as we are moving forward into this world that is so online based, we need to be way more cognizant about how we're sharing our data and about how we're protecting the data that we are collecting. So for instance, in the European Union and California, they have like the strictest privacy policy legislation, and there are thresholds that you have to meet. And I know you probably have more of a Canadian, US based community here, but it actually doesn't matter where you're located, because most of the laws around privacy are, you have to comply with the laws where your user is located. So it doesn't matter that you're sitting in Canmore or Toronto and your user is sitting in California. Just it's where that user is sitting and logging on to from that triggers the law that applies. So in Canada, we're a little late to the party in terms of like really beefing up our privacy legislation, but we have to be cognizant when we are doing email marketing or collecting information in order to get those email addresses, like in an opt-in or something like that, that we are doing it in line with those laws. So for instance, California has many different things that you have to do and let people know their rights in California. So someone in California can actually email you and say, hey, I want a copy of all the data you've collected on me. So and they can actually opt out of having you sell that data. Now, I don't recommend selling your email list to anyone. Like that's a big no-no in my books. You're asking for troubles. I don't even love like the sharing of email lists, being asked to write an email to someone's list is probably okay, but like, don't be transferring email lists to other people. Like it's just a bad idea. Mm-hmm. So there's all these kind of thresholds and things that you have to meet in terms of email marketing. And in Canada, we have CASL, which is Canada's anti-spam legislation. So you can't be going trolling for people's emails and spamming them all the time. You can't be selling email lists. You can't be doing all these kind of things that are kind of going outside the realm of why you told people why you were collecting their email in the first place. So that's kind of like very high level. There's lots of, but the important piece is to know, first of all, and when you're knowing this, you have to let your users to your website know, like, okay, why are you collecting this data in the first place? And usually it's because you want to be able to retarget those people in order to provide your specific services or your products and cater their experience that way. So, or how you're using that data. So for instance, if you go to anybody's privacy policy, it will usually say like, we're using it because we're tracking how you're interacting with our site. We want to know your purchasing habits. We want to collect all this data so we know like new products to give you or services to offer, all these kind of things. How, why, what they're collecting. So it's kind of like those 5 questions that, we learned in elementary school, like how, why, what, when, and where, or how, or whatever I missed. So yeah, you have to be really thorough. And that's why I don't think going and copying someone else's privacy policy is the best idea. It's a good start, like, don't get me wrong. But you have to actually be really specific as to what you're doing with this data and tell your users exactly how you're using it and why. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's totally overwhelming.
No, I'm like, oh my gosh. Do you know,
Yeah.
it's actually funny because I want to give myself a slap on the wrist because I have terms and conditions that I got as part of the bundle of contracts I purchased from you last year, and I still haven't put them on my website.
But the terms and conditions aren't legally required, but a privacy policy is.
Yeah.
So a privacy policy, if you have a website, you need a privacy policy. And I know as small business owners, you don't think that you're going to get in trouble, but all it takes is one data breach. And then, it actually can get really expensive, and kind of like cyber insurance is a great idea if you have a website. But I think a really good rule of thumb is only collect the very little amount of data you need from your users as possible to provide a service. So if you are providing a freebie, like a resource on your website, do you really need their last name? Maybe not. Maybe you just need a first name and an email. I think it's like the old school websites that I've often gone to where you have to put in like your name, your phone number, your address, like the name of your potential firstborn child. And it's like, why do you need all this? I'm literally just asking for your like 5 email scripts to send my client, So as a rule of thumb, really consider before you start with your lead magnet or something, what's the minimum amount of data that I need from that user? Because then you're really limiting what a hacker could do with any of that information if in the event of a breach. The great thing now is with all these different legislations, like California GDPR, which is the European Union privacy legislation that you might remember like 4 years ago or 3 years ago now, we all got those like, you need to opt into my email list. Remember when we got spammed with so many, like hundreds a week?
Yes.
If you want to stay on my email list, you need to hit this button. Well, that's because the GDPR required everyone to actively consent to being on someone's email list. So that is still a requirement. So when you go to people's websites and you're like, I accept, and you actually have to hit the button, I accept the terms of use and privacy policy, that's a legal requirement because it's showing active consent, and you cannot have that button ticked. The laws and the courts have said that you cannot already pre-check that button for people. That is not considered active consent. Active consent is actually clicking the button, and that is deemed an electronic signature. So that's why you see all these annoying pop-ups. The same goes for cookies. If you're using cookies, which we all are, whether you know it or not, your website is actively tracking people's behavior in a very creepy way behind the scenes, and collecting all this information from your users, whether you know it's doing it or not. You actually have to tell people that you're using cookies on your website. And yes, all these pop-ups are annoying. And I wish I had $1 for every conversation I've had with people to say like, oh, it's slowing down my website. It's not pretty. It's not, like mine's crap on my website too, but I have it there because it's a legal requirement. So those are all considered electronic signatures. So you need them on your website.
So what would you say, because I know some platforms offer a double opt-in option where people insert their information and then they get an email saying, one more step, just opt in here and then you'll get your freebie.
That's obviously like the belts and suspenders, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. Like people who are a little bit more worried about it. I'm not sure where it's a legal requirement for double opt-ins. I think it's more of like, I should check this. From what I know, it's not a legal requirement to have a double opt-in. I don't have a double opt-in, but sometimes people like it. I'm a Capricorn lawyer. Probably I should want it. Like a very rule following person, but Yeah, I don't think it's necessary for double opt-in, but I think it's also a way that people who are on their list really want to be there.
Yeah. So, what would you say about people who say already have a client list and they're just starting to use email marketing, like maybe to send out a regular newsletter? What are the rules surrounding adding existing clients to a list?
They
so not
have
strangers,
to have somehow given you permission to do that.
Okay.
So that would be kind of that GDPR situation where you send your client list. Like, I don't know where you keep that in Dubsado or so. Say you're using a client management system and you want to start a newsletter up. I just actually did this for my law firm. And so I sent an initial email to everybody saying, hey, I'm starting this email list. In my retainer letter, which is similar to a services agreement for entrepreneurs, it says in there that it gives me consent to email them about things. But as a respect and a courtesy to my clients who might not give two hoots about me emailing them stuff, I asked them to click a button and consent to opt in. So that was just my way of kind of respecting it. But also, if someone really wanted to take me to market about not having got that active consent, they probably would have a really solid case for that. So if you are in a position of starting your newsletter and you want to transfer your client list over to that, I would recommend having somebody opt into that through your initial email. The other thing is too, just from a business perspective, like unless you're using, a free email list software, it's expensive to have subscribers that are sitting there doing nothing and not interacting with your product. Like, I'm almost at the next threshold in active campaign for how many subscribers I have on my list. And it's not cheap.
Yeah.
So that's a really good just way to make sure that you are keeping your email list engaged.
I think you've actually brought a really good point there about having an engaged audience, because it's going to take a committed person to get past all the roadblocks. So you've got a pretty well qualified audience member there. Then it's not like social media where it pops up in their face, but yeah, like it or not, they've had to very consciously and actively say, yes, you can send me stuff, I will take it.
I think yes and no. Like, how many of those boxes have you checked being like, I don't care, give me the freebie? So yes and no. I think people are getting smarter. There's certainly a lot of information out there that's coming from the powers that be to inform people about their rights around privacy. We are seeing a lot more lawsuits around it. We're seeing big companies get taken to town over it. And then little companies who, used to do and make a lot of money off affiliate marketing by selling their email list to other groups. Like, that's just not okay anymore. And people are getting smart about it. So I would, look into it. And I think the other good thing about whatever stage you're at in your business about implementing a privacy policy, it actually forces you to understand what data you're collecting. Because, like, to be honest, on my Shopify site, like, I know what I'm collecting, but I just had to go through the whole process of, like, if someone from California asked me to produce all this data for them, like, how do I do that? I don't have an active US base right now, but it's coming, and a hint. And, but I need to know as a business owner how to comply with this. And most reputable websites like Shopify, Squarespace, Wix, you name it, they've set this up and it's not their first rodeo. They will definitely support you if this kind of thing happens. But I think the next step as business owners is to make sure that you have that coverage under your insurance policies for cyber risks and data, because it can be expensive. Like, if you have to get lawyers involved, like, we're expensive people, especially I wouldn't even deal with that kind of stuff. Like, that's such a specialty that you're going to have to pay for that specific knowledge around privacy in the country where that person is lodging the claim. So yeah, it can get kind of complicated, and I'm not really a scare tactics kind of person. Like, I think, like, if you have the minimum in place as a business owner who meets those different thresholds, like if you're Nike, like, you need a privacy officer and a dedicated person. That's the legislature. You need somebody actually dedicated to that. But as a small business owner, you're everything. You're wearing all the hats. So having a basic understanding of the requirements and the information, like I've got information in blogs on my website, but it's really easy to find, because there's so much information out there about like, okay, what do I basically need to know about this? And I think that if you have good terms of use and privacy policy on your website that actually reflects the data that you're collecting, why you're collecting it, et cetera, and then letting people know they can unsubscribe at any point in time, don't take it personally, whatever, make it easy for people to unsubscribe. That's actually a law. And then just make sure that you're having people opt in and click that button. Then you're kind of setting yourself up for like, okay, I can handle it if something happens. You've got a sword to defend yourself in the minimum.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's given us so much to think about, Jamie. And
don't be freaked out.
We're not freaked out. Yeah, don't be freaked out, listeners.
Yeah.
No, that's given us
so much why you're collecting information.
Yeah.
And I think it's like it shows that you're taking people's privacy seriously. Like if you don't have a privacy policy on your website, probably no one's actually noticing until someone's looking to notice it. And that there's trolls out there looking on websites for it to say, put their email in and have a claim. Like these things are just happening now because people have apparently too much time on their hands.
Well, I love that you share a lot of this information in your blog. So that's a great place for people to start if they want easy access to that kind of information. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, totally.
And just before we go, please let our audience know how they can find you and if they want some of your lovely products or services, where they can get them.
Perfect. So I'm always hanging out over on Instagram at Contracts Market. And I've got a little messaging on my website that's not a bot. It is me. So if you do have questions about what contract you need for your business or just anything in that kind of realm, you can always send me a message there or Instagram in there is the best spot because it leads you all back to my email.
Perfect. And we'll obviously leave links to that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us, Jamie. This was so helpful and I could already think of reasons to have you back for a follow-up episode.
Oh, yeah. I love chatting about it. So yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Enjoyed this episode? Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future ones. Want more from Hannah and Nicole? Visit showingupsolo.com to join the Showing Up Solo membership or to inquire about working with us on your business.